Hello and welcome. I am your host of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Author Karen E. Osborne. I have five novels out. The latest is Justice for Emerson. I am so glad that you're here. This is a space for readers and writers to come together and talk about books. I am so delighted to introduce all of you straight from Ottawa, Canada, is Mark P.J. Nadon. Hey, Mark.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad that you were able to make time for this. I'm just really excited to talk to you about your writing journey, about your podcast, about everything. So tell us a little bit. Let's start there. Let's start with your writing journey. How did did you start writing as a kindergarten kid in, first grade? Have you been writing all your life more recently? And what drew you to thrillers?
So I started reading a lot when I was about 18, reading and writing. I got into fantasy. That's where I started. It wasn't thrillers. And I really enjoyed the quest, people going on a quest, the adventure. I love that about fantasy. I felt like there wasn't enough of that in available because now I'm dating myself a little bit. There wasn't much fantasy available. So I wanted to write my own story, and it took me about 6 years to write my first novel, which was a fantasy novel. And for years, I wrote fantasy in novellas and short stories mostly. And then, life kind of got in the way for a while. And then about 5 years ago, I started taking writing very seriously, working on more novels. And about 3 years ago, I got to kind of a dark place or kind of a dark moment in my life. And that is when I decided that I was going to, I asked myself, like, if not now, then when? Because I was just feeling like, if not now, then when am I ever going to try to really be an author? And my son came to me one day and he said, well, this was about the Genesis Project. He said, well, why haven't you published it yet? Because he's younger at the time. He's like, well, why didn't you? Why not? And I didn't have an answer for him. So I was like, okay, this is the time. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to put everything I can into it. And from fantasy to thriller, it was really about, I kind of got bored with the world building. I wanted something faster. I wanted faster pacing. I wanted higher stakes. I wanted characters to go to kind of like the darkest moments in their lives and explore kind of what happens as a result. It's like a ticking time bomb all the time. Even if it's not a literal time bomb, it's like a ticking time bomb of is this character going to just lose their mind, which sometimes they do. And that's what I love
Me
about
too.
thrillers.
That's cool. And especially, so we went to thrillers, and you're going to tell us about your newest one. This is April, publication month. And tell us about the thriller. It's a psychological thriller, right? A psychological tech thriller.
Yeah.
Is that what it's? Yeah, the
Yeah.
treatment room. So tell us what the premise is, the setting. What's that ticking time bomb?
So it's a psychological tech. So think immersive virtual reality therapy gone wrong. And that's kind of the premise. So we have Lucas, who's a psychologist. He's with a client. Police kick down his door, arrest his client for murder. Soon after, the media, his client's on the media and thanks him for his help and Lucas for his help in guiding him to commit these murders. So overnight, Lucas is branded as the psychologist who guided a serial killer. So his life is like starting to go into ruins. His business put him on suspension because of all these allegations. And he decides he's going to investigate this on his own. And he goes to his notes, looks at at what him and his client talked about to try and find like what did I do wrong. And he ends up finding a link to a virtual reality therapy clinic called Pinnacle Therapeutics. This is, it's in the future, obviously. Immersive therapy isn't quite something we have right now, so this is in the future. And so he goes into this clinic to get treatment, and he starts to get addicted to it. And the more he gets addicted to it, the more he starts to lose himself until he can't come back from it. And then, the story goes on. And then we have his sister Amara, who is an investigative journalist. She's investigating a murder, and she's trying to solve this murder so that she can kind of further her career as a journalist, get out of the basement, so to speak. And she ends up finding also a link to Pinnacle Therapeutics, but instead of going into the therapy side, she tries to get involved with the CEO to ask questions. And then she ends up in sort of a relationship with the CEO. And then it becomes a question of, is she the one doing the manipulating, trying to get answers, or is he manipulating her? And you'll have to read the story to find out.
Hmm. I like that. That's a great pitch. I do have I've ordered it and I can't wait to
Well, thank
read it
you.
and write a review about it. Makes makes a book a psychological thriller. Like, for people who don't know, the differences, writers, we have all these genres that they put our books under. Sometimes we don't agree with the genres that they put our books under.
Yeah.
But what makes a book a psychological thriller?
It's funny you say that because the first book I put out, I called it a military thriller, The Genesis Project. That was my first book. And then I have recently rebranded it as a psychological tech because of the expectations of reader expectations on genre, even though that book was a military setting. For psychological, to me, it's about people, it's about characters, and it's about them going. The plot, a lot of the plot of the story is kind of the mental breakdown in some sense of the psychology of a character. So like in the treatment room, it's about Lucas slowly breaking down a little more at a time, and you're following him on this journey of, oh no, he's getting worse. Oh no, he's getting worse. Like that's the psychological, even though the plot is there and the tech and there's cool things that happen, it's really about him and his loss of autonomy, essentially.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And Amara. So one of the things that I thought was so interesting about this book is that the two protagonists are sisters and brothers,
Mhm.
as opposed, sister and brother, as
Yeah,
opposed to, um, lovers or, would-be lovers or whatever. Tell me, what made you want to write about a brother and sister? Do you have a sister?
I do. I have four sisters. Yes.
Well, there you go. That's
Yeah,
the
there's the
answer.
answer. Yeah. I don't know that there was a particular, I think I had like the idea for the story first, and then I put the people in the story and it just felt right, I guess. It's kind of like that writer instinct when you just know, oh, these people need to be brother and sister. I want them to fight for each other in a way that isn't romantic, and what better way to have two people wanting to fight for each other than other than romance? It's often family, right? So that is kind of where that I wanted to establish that, okay, they have a bond, they both have their own traumas, and now we want to, explore that from there and how,
I
and
like that a lot. The book that I have coming out in October is about two sisters, and you're right. That's an incredible bond, uh, fighting for each other. I really like that. So, as you think about Amara and Lucas, what do you admire about them? Why am I rooting for Lucas? What's terrific about him? And what do you admire about Amara?
I think Lucas is kind of well, he's a psychologist, so he's processing things. He's very empathetic, because he cares about people. Obviously, you would assume as a psychologist. And then I think you root for him not necessarily because of his strengths, but because of what you see as his vulnerabilities, which is as he's going into this machine and he's getting manipulated, he can justify that manipulation. He can say, "Oh, I know what's going on here. I see exactly what's happening." And he's almost powerless to stop it because he's like, "I get it. I know what's happening, so I can push a little further because I need these answers." but that drives him further down. So you're seeing that vulnerability of, he thinks he knows what's happening, but he doesn't. And you're like, man, just get yourself out of this mess.
Good. And what about Amara? What do you like about her?
Well, she's an investigative journalist, so she's far more outgoing. She, I think what you root for her is that when she starts to get to the CEO and she tries to go and starts a relationship or some kind of relationship, you see that her, because of her past, and you learn a bit about that, her trust. She doesn't have trust. And I think that's very, very relatable in that she's questioning herself and her gut, even though she's a very strong, independent woman. She's questioning, what's happening? Why do I feel this way? Is he manipulating me? And even though she's investigating and she wants these answers, she's also feeling and trying to understand those feelings. And it's like, to me, it's just very relatable. It makes you want her to win.
Yeah, I like that. They both sound like really terrific characters that I'll be worried and worried about as I turn the pages. Things that happens to us as writers is that as we delve into our characters, we figure some things out about ourselves, or we uncover something about ourselves, or we remember something about ourselves. Did anything like that happen to you over your writing journey? Did you uncover anything about yourself that you didn't know or that you forgot or
It's funny because I think I process a lot of my trauma and the things that I've been through my books and my characters almost as subplots. So I can look at my book now, at all my books, and I can say, oh, I know what was going on in my life in this moment because of what the subplot or what the background of what's happening in that book. So with the Genesis Project, which was the first book I published, Blake essentially, even though he's in the military and there's this whole plot, he has this work-life balance where he wants to do what's right for his family, which he's struggling with, but he's also trying to do what's right for his brotherhood, which is his work. So that work-life balance and the struggle of that relationship was what was real in that book. And I'll remember that because it's real to my life, even though the situation is very different and everything he went through, of course. But that little bit of work-life balance was human. And Armageddon's Descendants trilogy, that was post-apocalyptic, but the two main characters, husband and wife, end up separated. And they're not separated because of, we don't love each other anymore. They're separated because of it's post-apocalyptic. So there's literally a separation of distance because of the situation. The treatment room, Amara and her trust issues with getting into a new relationship. She's single and she's afraid to be in a new relationship. So, that's something that I experience. And then in my next book is actually that I'm working on is actually like a parent-child story, which
Hmm,
I think is also just kind of going through all the all the stages. And it's funny that it's how I can just pick up all these moments and be like, oh yeah, like this idea came to me completely independent of me. Like I don't go into it and think, oh, I need to apply my own issues to this book. It's like it just happens. It just happens in the background.
yeah, yeah. The book that you're writing now, will your son be okay with it?
Well, I'm outlining it right now. I haven't started writing it, so I'm sure he will be. He's only read one of my books, which he's a tough critic, but he enjoyed it. So
That is cool. Do you have any covers with you? Do you have any book covers that you could show us?
yeah, I have the Genesis Project here. I can pull that up. So this is the Genesis Project.
That's
This
a
is my
great
first
cover.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the third cover it's been through because of that genre misalignment that I was talking about earlier with the military versus psychological.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have the treatment room cover right now, but hopefully
Yet.
you get it soon. Yeah.
Yet. But we will. We'll have it and we'll post it as soon as you get it. We'll post it with the interview. Uh, so um you have a wonderful podcast
Thank you.
and it's called the Thriller Pitch, right?
Yeah.
And I had the privilege of being on it 2 months ago, which I loved, and that's how I met Mark. And then I so enjoyed our conversation that I invited him to come on to my podcast. Tell us a little bit about what got you to start it, what you're trying to accomplish with it. Give our audience a little taste.
The tagline is it's the director's cut of the thriller book world. So the goal was to get into the backstory of the story that readers love and writers want to know how you came up with the idea. So we talk about the process of writing. We talk about the characters and where the ideas came from. Now at the end of the show, we have a little spoiler, and for the end of the book, because not very many podcasts do you get to talk about the end of your book during the show, but I'm so curious about where people get that kind of ideas from that like how do you end your story now? And so I have that at the end, of spoiler alert. But the original concept, I started it because I wanted to give authors who wrote good books the opportunity to talk about their books and not have a gatekeeper necessarily in the way. So
Hmm.
people can freely apply to come on my podcast. It's on my website. They can go and apply. And I'll look at the cover, I'll look at the blurb, I'll read the sample, and if all those things to me read like a quality book, it doesn't really matter to me how many stars you have. I'm open to having anyone who writes some type of thriller on the podcast. So
That
that was what
grabs
was important.
you. That it grabs you as a reader. Yeah.
Yeah,
That is terrific. It's a wonderful. I've watched a number of episodes, and it's a real in-depth conversation, which we don't get as often, as writers. So I really
yeah.
respect the work you're doing. Was there? This is what are you reading? What are you writing? So do you have any books that you have read recently or you read a long time ago that you could recommend to our audience?
I do read a lot. There's one book that stuck with me, and I would love to have this person on the podcast, but I have yet to get an acceptance. But C.S. Cosby's King of Ashes, that book stuck with me. It was, the way that he started the book with, the main character who you're almost rooting for, like seems like a decent guy. And then you watch him decline into this sort of madness and spiral, yes, further and further into madness. And by the end of the book, you just think, I don't know if he's not a good guy. Like, I'm not rooting for him anymore. He did it. He started it to help his family, and he did so many things for the right reasons, but he did so many wrong things for the right reasons. And and the metaphors in that book and the language, the way he writes, it's just brilliant. I absolutely loved it.
I love S.A. Cosby. I also love The Blacktop Wasteland, which is just when a writer makes me worried about a character, care about a character in the first two pages, where
Yeah.
I could feel my heart, picking up like, oh no, this is going to be bad, and, worried for this character. I mean, that's a skill to get you, hooked so completely with just a couple of pages. He's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
S.A. Cosby, be on Mark's show and then come on
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah. We'll get
We're,
that
we're
rolling.
going to
Yeah.
tag him when
Yeah.
we when we post this.
Big fans.
Please
Yeah.
tell, please tell our audience how they can find out everything about you. Where can they go?
Yeah. The best place they can go is my website. That's where it links to everything. Mark P.J. Nadon, Nadon.ca. That's where they can find my podcast, my socials, and links to my books if you'd like to buy The Treatment Room or any of my books.
When that's CA. He's Canadian.
Yes.
So I'm just so glad to talk with you again. It's been a delight. I hope all of you have enjoyed it. I hope you will go to Mark's website, that you will check out his podcast, that you will check out his books, that you will buy one, two, whatever. You'll buy them, you'll read them, you'll write reviews. That makes such a difference for us.
It
Thank you
does.
so much for watching, and I'll see you next week on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Bye, everybody.
Bye.